Hey, you guys, and welcome to American Culture. So, today we're going to discuss two subjects. Number one, what makes a person picky? And number two, what makes a person jealous? Like I said, God's really been talking to me about the fruits of the Spirit. And if they're not being nourished with them or growing them in your life, what's going to grow in its place? And pickiness isn't, I haven't kind of figured out what fruit of the Spirit it is, but because I had a rider, we're going to talk about this. Had a lady who was telling me about how her daughter has become very picky. She's like 15 years old, and she at the point where mom can't really provide the things she wants. And I told her we become picky based off of two reasons. Number one, when we're younger, we try to love and get love and be accepted, and a lot of times it's rejected. Past a certain point, our parents are so focused on the sacrifice and the suffering that they're doing, they forget to actually love and encourage and inspire the kids. And so what happens is love becomes a very painful thing. It becomes expensive. And so they start to realize I don't have anything that I can get love out of my parents. Let me just surround myself with what I like. And so the pickiness is them basically saying, I like this, I like that. This makes me feel safe. I don't need another person in order to be able to feel this. So let me go ahead and keep this close to me and to myself. What it does is, as a human, we're here to evolve and expand. And so we should be going into every situation and saying, oh, okay, what do I have here in order to create more and make better things? But when you get into that picky mindset, you're not doing that. You're only trying to find what resonates with you. So that expansive mindset becomes very closed in. And often in adulthood, we carry it with us and we just keep on living the same day over and over and over again. Now, the reason why we do this is because of part two, the reason why. You see, the only thing that's going to get them to try something new, because if they're only doing what they like, then they're just sharing the repetitive experience. The only thing that can get them to try something new is if they're influenced. And this is where it goes back to what has taken place earlier in childhood. They didn't feel accepted. They didn't feel welcome. The warm embraces just weren't there anymore. And so when they see something outside of them, they say, I want to fit in with that. And I want to fit into that. Let me do that. Let me have that. And so what's happening with her daughter and what happens with so many of us is that we don't feel accepted in spaces that should accept and love and tolerate us. And so we build these cocoons up of what we like, but unfortunately we have to be influenced in order to like something. We don't really get to know ourselves, and it's not until you get into like your probably 30s, 40s, and some people, they never get here where they're like, who am I? It's not all this stuff I have around me so that I could be like somebody else. Who am I? The part two of this is, where does jealousy come from? And this is where we take it back to being biblical. Now, jealousy means that one of three things, and sometimes a person possesses all of them. It means I want what you have. I don't want what you have, but I don't want you to have it either. And I want you to want what I have. Now, the majority of people don't recognize this, but jealousy and envy comes from a lack of goodness. And it goes back to the whole what makes you picky. The child wasn't receiving very much goodness. People weren't just doing things for her own good. They do it so that they can get something in return. Like I said, once we start to realize that love comes with a price, we start to question our own worthiness of, can we afford that? And so when we don't think that we have the price to pay in order to get love, we start to live in that state of lack. And that's why a lot of people go around wanting something else. They're just living in that state of lack of unworthiness because they're not receiving any goodness. Now, the problem is, a lot of times you'll have people who they've been offered, hey, let's go do this, or hey, you want this or that or this, and you'll say no. That's you denying goodness because you're like, what's this attached to? What do I got to do for this? What do I got to say? You're the one who doesn't believe that you're worthy. You'll stay in a state of lack. You'll stay in a state of, I want this, but I don't have it, until you start to see your own worthiness. Now, the second part of this is where a lot of people live, especially you guys, since we're on the topic of parents, and this is the subject matter that a lot of us are going through right now. This is your familial type of envy and jealousy. Now, don't get me wrong, you're going to see it from other people, but a lot of times this is the parental jealousy. They don't necessarily want the experience that you're having, but they don't want you to have it either. These are the people that will ruin it. They will come and make a scene at whatever your graduation. It ends up being all about them. A lot of people again know them as being somewhat narcissistic, and the reason why is because if they don't want to have a good time, you're not going to have a good time either. If they don't want to go, you're not going to go either. And again, it goes back to their unresolved childhood issues of not being, paid attention to and being diminished, and they're going to do what they want to do now. So a lot of people who are doing what they want to do now end up becoming people who take the experience of life away from others simply because they don't want to have the experience of life. The last part, that one, that you have to be pretty bitter to do that. The first one, you have to feel unworthy. The second part, you have to feel bitter. This next part, you have to have completely lost yourself. Because again, you're doing the rat race. You're buying the house. You're getting the car. You're getting the marriage. You're doing all of this stuff in order to want other people to want your life. This is what's setting you up for the midlife crisis or the mid-relationship crisis, the mid-job crisis. This is what sets you up for the identity crisis. You will slowly realize, I have built up this entire life and none of this was for me. It was also that somebody else could give me applause, somebody else could give me accolades. I could become the influencer that other people said was good, and I want a piece of that. But who am I? Like I said, you guys, God has been challenging me to know myself, how I work mentally, physically, emotionally, energetically, chemically, all that other good stuff, to know who I am as a human and who He actually made me in Christ Jesus. The whole thing with the foster care, what I plan to do with children and all this other stuff. And it is working through knowing what fruits He put in my spirit and what they should be growing from here on out, and being able to check myself and hold myself accountable. Am I feeling jealous? Am I feeling envious? Am I feeling too picky? What's the reason for this? Am I not seeing the goodness of God, the goodness of others around me? So yes, when we feel as though we're not receiving goodness, stuff just doesn't come to us for the sake of being ourselves, we start to want to covet that. We start to want to covet good things, and it shows up in the form of jealousy, usually in one of three ways. Sometimes if you're Tina Turner's mom, all three different ways, where you want what somebody else has. You don't necessarily want what they have. You don't want what they have, but you don't want them to have it either. So you're a ruiner. You are a hope diminisher. You like to bring people down. It's got to all be about you. Most of these people are bitter and self-victimizers, and they'll stay there for the rest of their life. Narcissistic. Again, this is something that you will probably run into with your family and your friends more so than a stranger. And the last one, it has to do with you and you wanting people to want your life so much that you don't actually get to live a life of your own. You've lived it for a whole bunch of people. And again, that goes back to you not recognizing goodness and feeling like you're worthy of it. So we become picky when we don't feel like we can relate and we can fit in, and we surround ourselves with what we think is good. And the only way that we allow new good in is to be influenced, is to see that person that we want to be and say, I want to be like them, then I'll do it. And then again, jealousy comes from not having any goodness in your life. So the next time that someone is like, hey, let me go take you this place. Hey, let's go do this, my treat. Take it. That's goodness, you guys. And that goodness will cancel out some of your I want, because you'll finally open up and allow yourself to be in the space of receiving the life that you want, receiving the love that you want, receiving God the way that you should. Have a blessed day, you guys.